So what's really interesting is we're gonna get Nadal against Zverev in the first round, and before we got the draw, Nadal was plus 900 and Zverev was plus 600. Rafa's all the way down to 20 to 1 now. Alcaraz plus 275, Novak plus 300. So there probably is going to be much more parity on the men's side. How do you kind of handicap that side of the draw, and like what do you make of that first round matchup between Zverev and Rafa?
Yeah, the men's side is a lot more interesting and it's a lot tougher. The draw didn't really give you any clarity other than basically taking Rafa out of the mix. The that particular match against Zverev, it cuts both ways, right? Like if you're gonna lose, if you're not gonna win your final Roland Garros at this point with the physical state Nadal's in. He's not winning 7 matches on best of 5 tests. It's not happening, which means he's gonna lose at some point. And yeah, you could hope for a magical run and something special, and that would be sort of his grand finale here. But he's going to be able to play at the Olympics here, so I don't think we've seen his last ever. This won't be his last ever match on the red clay of Philippe Chatrier. But whatever the case is, if he's going to go out, he might as well go out to somebody who's contending for a title, and that's where Zverev is right now. He's very much in form, just coming off a Rome title. A lot of history between those two players, by the way, and I think. The flat earth kind of space we live in is because the guys at the top all have huge question marks. Djokovic realistically just has not played well all year. Like he was an absolute flame out in the Australian Open in the semifinals to Jannik Sinner. Just kind of passed on a bunch of tournaments that he usually plays in the run up to this particular title, and then at Rome, which felt like was he had pointed to for his kind of ramp up tournament. After round 1, I believe he got popped in the head with a full metal water bottle and was concussed or something weird, and just came out the next match. He came out the next match and he had no balance. He was he was a shell of himself, lost in embarrassing fashion. And so he elected to take a wild card to go play in Geneva this week to try to get some match fitness, and expecting him to show up and be especially sharp, I think is asking a lot. Alcaraz is dealing with a forearm injury, which is more like an elbow injury, and his forearm has no bite right now. It has no teeth. I don't understand why he's the favorite here. He got a bad draw too. He's in the toughest quarter. Jannik Sinner is a candidate for a withdrawal or a walkover at any point in time. His doctors at 1 week ago recommended he not play this tournament because he is dealing with the hip injury that they are concerned could become a chronic injury if he plays on clay much more.
Fascinating stuff. This is crazy stuff going on. You just went through 6 guys that told us an anecdote about all 6. This is crazy.
Those are your top 3 guys. Those are your 3 favorites.
Yeah.
So yeah, so your top, the top. There's no separation really right now between class tier 1 and tier 2. I swung away on Casper Ruud here just because he won Barcelona on the run up to this. That's a huge leading indicator of playing well on these surface conditions, and 2-time finalist here against lost to Nadal, lost to Djokovic, but he's in a weak section of the draw. He's going to face Djokovic probably in the first quarterfinal, and if he can beat him there, then I think he can win this title. So I think realistically, find a men's player that you want besides Nadal. Find a men's player that you think has a realistic chance to win. Take a price and ride it out, because there could be chaos a week from today.
I want to ask you about NBA, Whale, but in this could be literally a 1-number answer. How many players realistically on the men's side can win the tournament? Give me a number.
8. There are 8.
And usually it's 2, right? Usually it's
usually it's 1. Sometimes it's 1.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 1.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes it's 1.
Somebody was minus 400. We learned about that one.
We didn't mention Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas has a chance.
Right.
Didn't mention Rublev. Rublev has a chance. Zverev has a chance, although nobody is rooting for Zverev. He's going to be the most rooted against player in a long time because of all of his off-the-court baggage. So.
Yeah, even I got that one. Yeah, so you're a lot of history between these players. Be I like one and I hate the other. There's the history between the players. So that'll be really fun.
We all think of Jaden McDaniels as this defensive stopper, which he is, but last night he was really good offensively, especially from 3-point range. Now, you would expect some regression and him not to shoot that way from 3 every single night, but do you think this matchup, once again, heading into game 2, his points per game prop is sitting there at 12.5. Do you think that McDaniels is a guy until they adjust Like if they're going to continue to hang that number. Naz Reid as well at 10.5. Like are those two guys maybe the Minnesota kind of their other players, those role guys that you would look at?
That's a huge number on Jaden. I don't know if I could ever sign up on paying that number. But I did want to know, it wasn't just corner standing. They were running off-screen actions with him. They were clearly trying to get him involved. And who was guarding him? Luka Doncic, who wasn't tired at the end of the game. Luka Doncic. So I definitely could see it. It's just that's such a huge number. I mean, we were betting like 7.5 on Jaden earlier this year. So I'm staying away. I think Nas is in a pretty good spot, though. They struggled. Luka guarded him a little bit. They did have PJ on him a little bit when he wasn't out there with Kat. So I think that's something that could kind of work. So, yeah, I think if I wanted to bet it over, it's probably Nas. Curious to see where the Nickeil Alexander-Walker minutes are coming down. I mentioned Mike Conley. If he gets cut down, Mike Conley's minutes got really ramped up in the second half, and that really cut into Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I thought would play a little bit more. Maybe that's the answer to guard Kyrie. So, yeah, I think Nas, I feel very safe. He played great and didn't even run well, right? No foul trouble from Kat, no foul trouble for Gobert, no Jaden. There weren't really minutes to be had. He still got 24 minutes. So, yeah, I think Nas is in a pretty good spot of all the bench guys, especially in the matchup, too.
And somehow we went this whole interview and talked about like everybody in the game, and PJ and I went the whole first hour, and we didn't talk about Kyle Anderson taking like 78 seconds to shoot 3-pointers and like whatever that was in those minutes, just like one of the weirdest like shot motions, wide open. I don't think there's a prop conversation necessarily to have there, but I just like I saw this is one of those situations where Twitter's the best, where it's like Kyle Anderson shoots threes like he has 2-factor authentication. It's just like all these things. Like it's just all really funny. I do want to ask you about the rest of the series though, Mike. We only have a couple minutes left. I think we all think Boston's very likely to advance out of the Eastern Conference Finals. They'll make the NBA Finals. We're already kind of talking about matchups, who they'd like, who they wouldn't like. But who do you think they're actually going to get? Is this a case of Dallas showed you enough in Game 1? You think they're very likely to win the series? Do you think Minnesota can come back? Give us a prediction here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, I still kind of lean Minnesota. I just think they were tired, and I just think that they got such a great half out of Kyrie. They got such a great close out of Luka. Derek Lively, oh my God, Derek Lively's like come out of nowhere as like a top 3-4 rookie. It feels like arguably the best rookie in the playoffs, right? With Wemby not in there, schooled Chet. Anyways, I still think the Wolves probably just being a little bit attached to my priors here. I thought the Wolves were kind of coming in with all the momentum. They just beat Denver, so maybe a little bit of a hangover, which I think makes sense. But they've got the artillery, and they've got and they missed so many open shots. Their catch and shoot and their spot ups were really bad. But then the Mavs ran. I mean, it's tough. It's certainly nothing I'm going to take a additional position on. The Mavs had a lot of edges for for things not to break their way in a lot of areas, and the way they dominated the paint, like I said. It's tough, man. So I had not a great answer from me here, but probably sitting out. But I still kind of just lean Wolves just because you beat the Nuggets like that. I'm going to give you a little bit of leash after you kind of squandered Game 1.
Obviously, anybody who's listened to the show knows that you are heavily invested in Florida. So your takeaways here after Game 1 against the Rangers.
Couldn't have been a better start. I mean, really, like won a game on the road. Won a game on the road where they looked like by far the better team. Outshot the Rangers for a large part of the game. The Rangers went almost an hour without like even a remotely dangerous scoring chance in the game, which is very unlike them. And escaped the game healthy, which is a big thing too. Alexander Barkov, their captain, blocked a shot at the end of the game 6 against Boston, and people were worried about that. They had lost Sam Bennett, one of their second line center earlier in the playoffs with a hand injury. So just even like win, look like the better team, escape healthy, and maybe throw a fourth one in there, get one of the better goaltending performances from Bobrovsky in this playoffs. And this is kind of where I want to go here. I think Florida is going to win the Stanley Cup. I think that's the most likely thing to happen. The market now also thinks that. So I don't know if there's like a lot more betting that can happen. Like I like the Panthers a lot against the Rangers. Whoever won Panthers Bruins, we talked about betting them. So like the Panthers against the Rangers. Now they've won. Panthers the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. Great, totally agree. Conn Smythe is going to get more cloudy now because the Tampa series and the first part of the Boston series were dominated by Florida's skaters and Kachuk and Barkov and Verhaeghe and to a lesser extent Reinhart, but like all these guys contributing just like tons of points, tons of goals, high scores. That some of the Tampa games had some really high scores in them, the early Boston games. And so their skaters in the Conn Smythe market got really, really low priced. And I had bet all of them for a lot of money. And I just never saw a need to add Bobrovsky the way that he was playing. And we did a segment even on the show, Peach, I think right before you and I started doing shows together, where I read there were 4 goalies since the lockout that had won Conn Smythe. And I just read off their statistics in those postseasons and how remarkable they were. I mean, 3 of the 4 had goals against under 2, like sub 2, which is crazy. Really high save percentages, tons of shutouts. And I just go like, this isn't Bobrovsky. And Bobrovsky was being priced like the second most likely Panther to win. This was early in the playoffs. And I just go like, unless he's going to be like these other guys I just read off, which is what, like Cam Ward, Tim Thomas, Jonathan Quick maybe, and then there's another one that I'm forgetting, Vasilevsky, then unless he's going to play like that, then I don't know why you'd ever buy. And so the whole Tampa series goes by, and it's like, no way. And then the first part of the Boston series, and you're just like, absolutely not. Not even facing that many shots. Like Swayman is the story of this series. Like Bobrovsky got nothing to do with this series. And then the back half of the Boston series, something remarkable happens, and it carries over into last night's games. The Panthers can't stop playing under games. They can't stop playing low scoring games. I mean, it's really unbelievable, just the type of game. And I went the opposite way here. We did the preview segment at the end of the show last night, and you're like, what are your expectations for this series? And I thought we were going to go back to kind of the Tampa series, a little more offense, a little more, like Shesterkin hadn't been that good in the playoffs. Bobrovsky hadn't been that good. They've been fine, but they hadn't been Swayman or even Ottinger. Like, maybe we get some scoring back, and it hasn't happened. And I'm wondering if this is just the new Panthers normal here, where we're going to play 2-1 games a lot, and we're going to play, 3-0 and 3-1 games a lot. And if that happens, then like I have this kind of nagging suspicion that Bobrovsky is going to start being more and more relevant as the reason for the team's success. And last night was his first shutout of this playoffs. For people who are curious, the other Conn Smythe winners, Cam Ward, I think, had 2 shutouts. All the other winners had more than this. So more work to do, obviously, but still plenty of games left, and more important games, Rangers and then the Stanley Cup final against Edmonton or Dallas. Either one will be required from Bobrovsky. So I'm kind of in this weird spot where rather than like, do you want to add another team or do you want to hedge, which I think is probably maybe how people are starting to think about this as Florida becomes more and more and more likely to win. I'm kind of the opposite. Like, no, I'm still way in on Florida and betting them, but now I have to figure out if I'm like also betting this other player in addition to Matthew Tkachuk, who scored the winning goal last night, the 1-0 goal, and had the assist on the empty netter. Like, okay, I'm adding more him and Barkov like every day. Do I also now need to just pepper in a bunch of, because Bobrovsky's still pretty long priced, 14-1, 16-1. Do I need to do this like before it's too late? Like if he has a shutout again in game 2, he might start being priced like the most likely Panther to win. And then that puts me in a pretty rough spot in that market. The Stanley Cup win is still incredibly good, but it's funny how like as the playoffs go on, I feel like the entire personality of this team is just starting to kind of slow down and like grind to a halt, where it's, Forsling, one of their best defensemen who has a crazy plus minus, he's awesome, and their forecheck is awesome, and Bobrovsky's like not a lot is required, but he's making good saves. Like, well, that wasn't what it was the first 8 games. Like the first 8 games, it was here's like multiple goals, 4 5-point games for a couple of guys, and it's just as their profile has changed, as these series have worn on, Bobrovsky's becoming a bigger part of the picture. So like I've started adding today. Like I'm probably going to add more as game 2 is going on. If we have like another scoreless first period, second period, like can't get caught with my pants down on this guy who's just like started playing really well and had his first shutout last night. So rather than like, oh, it's time to pull back and add the Rangers or add Dallas or add Edmonton, like, no, it's like pedal down, but let's expand the list of bets here a little bit, and let's add some more stuff in addition to the stuff that we've been peppering the entire time.